Deep within the UK's quiet corners lie camps frozen in time, places where shadows linger and secrets refuse to rest. Tonight, we explore the 10 most haunted POW camps Britain has ever known. 1. Harperley POW Camp, Camp 93. Tucked away in the quiet woodlands of County Durham, lies an unassuming cluster of weathered wooden huts. To the casual passerby, it might look like little more than a derelict scout camp or an overgrown military training site. But these huts hold echoes of a past both deeply human and, some would say, deeply unsettling. This is Harperley POW Camp, or Camp 93, one of the few surviving prisoner of war camps from the Second World War in the UK. During the war, it housed hundreds of German and Italian prisoners, captured soldiers brought to Britain from far-flung battlefields. And while it was, undeniably, a prison, it was unlike many others. You see, Harperley was known for its strange sense of harmony. There were football matches between prisoners and guards. Prisoners were allowed to grow vegetables, paint murals, even perform plays. Some called it a model camp, where dignity wasn't entirely forgotten amidst the madness of war. But now, decades on, Harperley is silent. Or it should be. Locals have long spoken of unusual occurrences around the old site. One evening, a dog walker claimed to hear singing, a male voice, soft and mournful, echoing from the trees. When he followed the sound, there was nothing there, only the wind and the rustle of pine needles. Others have glimpsed a figure in old-fashioned uniform standing just beyond the perimeter fence, still, silent, and when approached, vanishing like mist in sunlight. Inside the huts, much remains as it was. The wooden walls are chipped and fading, but theatre posters and hand-painted decorations can still be seen in some rooms. One hut, once used as a theatre, is said to give off an eerie hum at night. Staff have heard what they describe as faint footsteps on the stage and the sound of distant laughter. A volunteer guide whispered once, "We tried doing night tours, just once, but after a woman screamed, saying she'd heard someone whisper German in her ear, we stopped." Today, Harperley has been partially restored as a living museum. Visitors can walk the same paths once trodden by soldiers of two worlds, enemies by uniform, but not always by heart. Still, even during daylight, there's a strange tension in the air, as if something remains, not malicious, not dangerous, just waiting. And so, if you ever find yourself walking near the woods at Harperley, especially as the sun sets and the trees begin to sigh with the evening wind, stop for a moment. 2. Island Farm, Bridgend, Wales. On the edge of a quiet housing estate in Bridgend, South Wales, stands a flat-roofed concrete building, ordinary at first glance. Blink, and you'd miss it. But beneath its plain exterior lies one of Britain's most extraordinary wartime stories, and some say something stranger still. This is Island Farm, the site of the largest prisoner escape ever attempted on British soil. During the Second World War, Island Farm held hundreds of German prisoners, many of them officers, disciplined and determined. The camp appeared orderly, but underground, something else was taking shape. In February 1945, guards discovered a hand-dug tunnel under Hut 9, over 70 feet long. 70 prisoners had slipped into the night. Most were eventually caught, but the escape left a mark, not just on history, but on the site itself. Though most of Island Farm has been demolished, Hut 9 remains, preserved like a time capsule. The original tunnel entrance has been reconstructed inside, alongside bunk beds, graffiti, and old German signs. But something else lingers. Visitors, especially those on evening tours, often speak of a strange coldness, not from the weather, but a heavy stillness, as if the air itself is waiting. Tour guides have reported rhythmic tapping beneath the floorboards, as though someone was still digging. A local paranormal group once recorded a thermal image of a crouched figure below the floor, only to find the space completely empty. Some hear whispers in German, others see shadows dart across the walls, even when no one moves. And then, the infamous knock. Many have heard it, 3 knocks from the tunnel entrance, always 3, always followed by silence. Some believe it's a restless spirit, others say it's the echo of determination, men clawing their way to freedom, echoing through time. Today, Island Farm is cared for by volunteers and opens to the public a few times a year. School groups visit, historians come. Ghost hunters never miss a chance. But the tunnel never truly rests. If you find yourself in Hut 9, take a moment, listen closely. You may hear whispers. You may hear digging. Or, if you're truly lucky, you may hear 3 knocks. History doesn't die. It waits, beneath the floorboards, behind the walls. Sometimes it knocks. 3. Camp 105. There's a forgotten path on the edge of Wooler, Northumberland. Follow Brewery Road far enough, past hedgerows and fading farm signs, and you'll reach what remains of Camp 105. Today, there's barely anything left. Just a cracked concrete slab. A few rusting pipes poking through the weeds. Most passers-by don't even notice. But the silence here feels heavy. Too heavy, some say. During the Second World War, this quiet patch of countryside became home to German prisoners of war. Camp 105 was small, modest. No barbed wire towers, no dramatic defenses, just rows of huts tucked behind trees. There were no escapes, no riots. On the surface, it was uneventful. But something about it lingers. Over time, odd stories began to surface, whispers from hikers, dog walkers, even a local postman. Tales of a man standing at the tree line, still and silent, watching. Always on the edge of sight, always gone when you turned. One woman, out on a morning walk, described it like this. He was tall, looked like he wore a soldier's coat, but his face, it wasn't there, just this pale blur. I blinked and he vanished. Others have spoken of feeling watched, especially at dusk, of sudden, unnatural cold, even in midsummer. In the early 2000s, paranormal investigators visited. Their equipment picked up strange electromagnetic bursts, sharp and irregular, right where the camp's main hut once stood. One claimed to have recorded heavy breathing, slow, rhythmic, but no one had spoken. Later, the site was considered for redevelopment. Plans were drawn, soil samples taken. But after 2 workers refused to return, citing sudden nausea and a sense of overwhelming dread, the project was quietly shelved, no official reason ever given. Today, Camp 105 is little more than a memory beneath the weeds, but the locals still talk, softly. Some say the faceless man is a soldier still on watch. Others believe he wants to be seen, remembered, that he's waiting. And if you ever find yourself on Brewery Road at dusk, look carefully toward the trees. You may see a tall figure, still, watching. Just don't look too closely. Because if the stories are true, he's already looking at you. Not all spirits scream. Some simply stand and wait. Camp 105, where even silence watches. 4. Camp 1009. There's something peculiar about the trees in Northway, not something obvious, but stand among them long enough, and you'll sense it. A subtle lean, a tilt, as if the entire woodland is just slightly off. Locals say the ground feels wrong, animals avoid it, and if you follow the quiet footpath near the bypass, you'll come to what remains of Camp 100. Built during the Second World War, it was once a functioning prisoner of war camp, one of many scattered across Britain. It held German prisoners. Quiet, uneventful, few records exist, fewer photographs, almost as if the place didn't want to be remembered. But it hasn't entirely vanished. What's left is minimal: crumbling concrete, rusted fencing half buried in soil, and what looks like the base of a watchtower now tilted as if slowly being pulled underground. People who visit say the same thing. The moment you step onto the site, your balance shifts, just slightly, even though the ground looks level. Geologists point to soil pressure or root movement, logical physical causes, but not everyone's convinced. Some report hearing a low hum beneath the earth, not electrical or mechanical, just a faint, pulsing vibration, like breath from below. When it happens, birds go quiet, insects vanish, the air stops. A paranormal team once set up motion-triggered cameras overnight. Most of the footage was empty until 3:12 a.m. That's when one camera began to tilt, slowly, as if nudged. Then the feed cut out. When retrieved, the tripod's legs were bent, warped without any sign of force. Then there's the man in the coat. Several hikers claim to have seen a lone figure walking through the field where Hut A once stood, always from afar, always walking slowly, deliberately. But he doesn't walk straight, he tilts, just like the trees. One retired railway engineer recalled, he looked wrong. His steps moved sideways, like he was walking uphill on ground that isn't sloped. No one has ever approached him. No one's seen him arrive or leave. Just that strange, tilted walk, disappearing behind a rise that isn't there. Today, Camp 109 sits quietly under moss and root. Developers have looked at the land, but nothing sticks. Surveyors mention odd subsurface density. Engineers walk away, because something beneath Northway doesn't want to be disturbed. And maybe it's not the camp that's haunted. Maybe it's the land itself. Some ghosts drift through walls. Others live in the soil beneath your feet. Camp 1009, where even the earth remembers. Featherstone Park, Camp 18, out in the rolling hills of Northumberland, between the wild Pennines and Hadrian's Wall, once stood a busy prisoner of war camp. Featherstone Park, Camp 18. At its peak, it held over 4,000 German prisoners, officers, soldiers, men caught in war. It was one of the largest camps in Britain, well-run, secure, efficient. But the stories left behind aren't about numbers or fences. They're about Room 6. Even now, long after the barracks were demolished, locals speak of it quietly with unease. Room 6 was in an administrative block for interviews, reports, and disciplinary hearings. Nothing sinister on paper, but anyone who worked there will tell you Room 6 never warmed up, ever. Even in summer, when the air outside was hot, the room stayed cold, cold enough to see your breath. They tried everything, replaced windows, reran heating pipes, brought in electric heaters. One technician said, "We measured it, 20 degrees in the hallway, 5 inside room 6. When you closed the door, the temperature dropped again." One officer in 1944 refused to enter it alone after dark. He said the walls whispered, not words but breaths, as if the room was exhaling. Papers went missing, then reappeared hours later, placed neatly in the center of the desk when no one had access. One German prisoner held briefly there refused to return. He told the interpreter, "There is someone else in there, behind the wall, watching." After the war, A builder broke part of the wall, hoping to find wiring. Instead, he found a sealed crawl space, empty and silent. But when he stepped inside, he collapsed within seconds, diagnosed with hypothermia. In late August, in a concrete room with no airflow, no explanation was ever found. Today, only fragments of Featherstone Park remain, concrete footings and faint outlines on the grass. The spot where Room 6 stood is now an open field, no markers, just grass. Locals say dogs refuse to cross it, birds never land there. One drone pilot saw a perfect square of frost in the middle of thawed land. Some say it's nothing, a trick of the wind, a dip in the ground. Others are not so sure, because cold like that doesn't come from air, it comes from memory, from something never quite gone. Some rooms are empty, others wait to be noticed again. Featherstone Park, Room 6, where warmth has no place. 6. Marchington Barracks, Staffordshire. On the edge of Staffordshire countryside, past quiet hedgerows and winding roads, lies Marchington Barracks. Once a hub of wartime activity, a training ground, logistics centre, and during World War II, a prisoner of war camp housing German and Italian soldiers. Now, many buildings stand abandoned, windows dark, corridors empty. Well, almost empty. Former soldiers, contractors, and local police who patrolled the grounds all whisper one shared story: the figure in the long coat. Marchington's layout is typical MOD style. Long rectangular blocks connected by concrete corridors, some nearly 50 meters long, wide enough for two men to march side by side. Echoey, cold, still at night. One evening in the late 1980s, a young recruit on guard duty claimed he saw a tall figure walking down the corridor opposite the mess hall. Not running, not sneaking, just walking. He called out, no reply. He chased after the figure, turned the corner, no one there. He later said, "He wore a long coat, old-fashioned, too long to be army issue, and I couldn't hear his footsteps, just mine." Months later, a cleaning contractor working after hours in an old barracks building refused to return. She said she heard footsteps pacing the corridor, steady, deliberate, circling while she was locked inside alone. Security reviewed CCTV. Nothing. But audio caught faint tapping, like a boot heel, echoing every 8 seconds precisely. Then, there's the famous light flicker. In Block C's hallway, overhead lights flicker between 2:55 and 3:10 a.m. Always the same lights, same time. Bulbs replaced, wiring checked, no faults, yet it continues. Paranormal investigators set up thermal cameras there. At 3:07 a.m., they recorded a cold silhouette, tall, cloaked, drifting across the frame. One investigator said, "It didn't walk like a man, more like gliding, but casting a heavy shadow." Some say it's the ghost of an officer wrongly accused of aiding POWs. Others think it's a prisoner still pacing halls in a uniform he never took off. More superstitious staff call him the Corridor Walker. Today, parts of Marchington serve civilian purposes. The rest is fenced off, quiet, crumbling, watched by motion sensors that sometimes ping with no cause. Those who work there tend to leave the corridors before midnight, just in case. Because once you've seen the coat, you never forget it. Some ghosts don't haunt rooms, they haunt routes. Marchington Barracks, where footsteps never really fade. 7. Setley Plain. POW Campnang tucked deep within the ancient New Forest, a woodland older than many cathedrals, lies Setley Plain. At first glance, it's nothing remarkable. Just heathland and trees, quiet, still. But hidden beneath the moss and bracken are the fading remains of a World War II prisoner of war camp. Setley Plain once held hundreds of German soldiers. Very little survives, a few scattered walls, oddly regular trenches, and something stranger still, stone circles. Perfect, moss-covered rings sunken into the earth. No one knows who made them, or why. During the war, guards noted odd behavior. At dusk, prisoners would silently gather, not to talk, not to plan, just to stand. Always in a circle, always on the same ground. One British officer wrote in his diary, "They act like it's some sort of church, but there's no prayer, no speech, just stillness. It gives me the chills." Some believed it was quiet resistance, others suspected secret codes, but when questioned, the prisoners offered no explanation. After the war, the camp was dismantled, nature returned, but locals grew wary of the place, especially after dark. Riders reported horses freezing at the edge of the plain, dogs whined, animals refused to go near. Then came the lights. In the 1970s, walkers described strange glows in the forest, not torches, not headlights, but soft, circular lights rising from the ground, always silent, always near the old camp. One camper said, "We thought someone was signaling, but it wasn't Morse, it was rhythmic, like breathing." And then, the sounds. Visitors spoke of footsteps circling them in the undergrowth, though no one was there. A group of teenagers in the 90s heard chanting, low, foreign words just beyond understanding. When they ran, the sounds stopped. But for weeks afterwards, one of them claimed he woke to find pine needles on his bedroom floor. To this day, those who visit Setley Plain speak of the silence, not peaceful, but watchful. You can walk the trails, stand where the huts once stood, but if you find a stone circle, think twice before stepping inside. Some say they're old drainage lines. Others believe the prisoners, many from rural Germany, revived ancient rites for comfort, or power, or memory. Whatever it was, it never left. Some places don't forget, some places remember in circles. Setley Plain, POW camp, where silence gathers at dusk. 8 Henlland Bridge Prison of War Camp 70, in the gentle hills of Carmarthenshire, Wales, lies the site of Henlland Bridge Camp 70, a place unlike most other prisoner of war camps in Britain. During World War II, it was known not just as a holding site for German POWs, but as a center for psychological experiments. Efforts were made to understand, and sometimes manipulate, the minds of the prisoners. Records remain sparse, shrouded in secrecy, but locals tell stories, strange tales of prisoners haunted not by walls or guards, but by their own minds. One former guard, now in his 80s, remembers, "Some men wouldn't sleep. Others would wake screaming, claiming they'd dreamed of places they'd never been, events that felt too real. Sometimes they'd talk about memories that weren't theirs." The phenomenon came to be known among the camp staff as the dream sickness. Prisoners reported vivid dreams that felt like waking moments, dreams where the past and present blurred. A war they never fought, a family they never knew, a life not their own. One German officer described it simply, "It was as if the camp itself was whispering to us in sleep." Psychologists brought in during the war noted that many prisoners shared similar dream patterns despite having no direct contact. Years after the camp closed, local villagers began to feel the echo of those restless nights. Some claim that if you stand on the ridge overlooking the campsite at dusk, you can hear faint murmurs, whispers of voices weaving through the wind. A woman living nearby told a reporter, "Sometimes I wake in the middle of the night, feeling cold, as if someone just walked past me. Then I hear a voice, soft and distant, saying things I don't understand. A handful of paranormal investigators have visited the area. They describe a thick, almost tangible atmosphere, like the residue of countless shared dreams trapped between the stones and trees. Some speculate that the camp's experiments cracked open a door, not just into minds, but into something else. Something that lingers. Not all hauntings are about ghosts trapped by death. Some are about memories trapped in time. And at Henlland Bridge Camp 70, those memories still wander, lost between dreams that aren't theirs. Sometimes the past doesn't rest in silence, it speaks in dreams. Henlland Bridge Camp 70, where memories drift and mingle. 9. Centre for World War I Internment. On the windswept Isle of Man, between the rolling hills and the ever-changing sea, once stood the Knockaloe Internment Camp, the largest prisoner of war camp in the British Isles during the First World War. At its peak, Knockaloe held more than 23,000 men, soldiers from Germany, Austria-Hungary, and beyond, confined behind miles of barbed wire and guarded by watchtowers that never rested. The camp was more than just fences and barracks. It was a small world of its own, filled with stories of hope, despair, and fleeting moments of humanity amid hardship. But with such a mass of souls confined in such tight quarters, whispers and tales soon grew. The locals spoke of strange sounds drifting across the moors at night, the soft clang of distant gates, muted voices singing forgotten songs, and footsteps pacing the perimeter long after the camp's gates had been locked for the evening. Some visitors to the site today claim to feel an overwhelming sense of presence, as if the land itself remembers every footstep, every whispered prayer, every heartbeat from a century ago. One elderly resident once shared, "My grandfather worked here as a guard. He told me sometimes, when the wind blows just right, you can hear the men's voices carried on the breeze, singing songs from home or praying for peace." Ghost stories, perhaps, but others say it's more than that. In the fields where Barracks once stood, there have been reports of phantom figures, silhouettes of men in uniform, caught in the corner of the eye, vanishing when looked at directly. And there is one particular spot near the camp's old hospital site where visitors have described a sudden chill, an icy breath passing by despite the warm summer sun. Archaeologists have uncovered fragments of letters and personal belongings buried in the soil, reminders that, behind the barbed wire, these men were more than prisoners. They were souls caught in time. Time that still echoes. Some places are marked not by stone but by memory. Knockaloe Camp, where history whispers through the wire. 10. Lodgemore Camp, tucked away in the outskirts of Sheffield. Lodgemore Camp was no ordinary prisoner of war camp. During World War II, it doubled as a military hospital, treating wounded German prisoners. The hospital wards were meant to heal bodies, but some say they couldn't mend the souls. Staff and patients alike whispered about unseen presences roaming the dimly lit corridors late at night. Nurses reported hearing soft footsteps pacing just outside their rooms, doors that would slowly creak open, only to close again without a breeze. One orderly described seeing a shadowy figure standing silently at the end of the hall, vanishing when he blinked. Patients talked of voices murmuring in languages no one there understood, and of cold spots that moved unpredictably through the wards, chilling even the warmest summer nights. The most chilling tale comes from Ward 7. Several prisoners, bedridden and weak, claimed to see a woman in a white uniform walking slowly among them, checking on wounds. But when they looked closer, her face was blurred, indistinct, almost otherworldly. No staff ever reported such a nurse. Years after the war, the camp was closed and the buildings repurposed or demolished. But locals say that on quiet nights, when the wind shifts just right, you can still hear whispers behind the ward. Footsteps down empty halls, the soft sigh of healing that never quite came. Sometimes, the scars we cannot see leave the deepest marks. Lodge Moor Camp, where healing meets haunting. Though these camps lie silent, their stories still haunt the shadows. Thanks for watching. If you love mystery and history, subscribe to Creepy Experience. Until next time, stay curious and watch the shadows.